Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Mercy Marsh Jenkins, and I am super excited to be here to walk you through a process of healing and deliverance and discernment through this course that we're doing, which is spiritual abuse recovery. And as I mentioned before, I don't come to you as a psychologist. I'm not coming to you as a clinician. I'm not coming to you as an academic from academia, but I am coming to you as one who is a survivor of actually being groomed in a cult, to the extent where I was also somebody who was second command. And so I had to implement a lot of the instructions that was given by the cult leader. And so last week, well, not last week, the week before, I had shared with you guys what is spiritual abuse and what it's not. Okay. And why we don't use the terminology church hurt. Okay. We don't use that. That was something I had a personal revelation on it myself. The Lord actually rebuked me for using that term. Okay. After all, Jesus could have cried out as one who had been hurt by his own people. He was rejected, he was despised, but yet still he came to save us and deliver us. He came for the church. And so it is what it is. Hurting people hurt people. And so, not to associate the church with hurt, because we don't even do that with the workplace, right? But yet to understand that he did warn us. Okay, he did warn us. He told us that there will be those who are ravenous wolves, and that they will be those who will be clothed in sheep's clothing. They will be wolves. Wolves in sheep's clothing, and to be aware of those. And so we put the blame at those individuals. And my job today is to sharpen your discernment. Okay. Hebrews 5:14 reminds us that we are to continue to sharpen our discernment by reasonable use, by exercising it. And so we have the discernment, which is the natural, and then we also have the spiritual. So hopefully through this series, your discernment would have been sharpened, your understanding, your knowledge, your ability to judge, your ability to discern. Okay. And Charles Spurgeon makes a great quote, and I'm going to paraphrase his quote, but discernment isn't the ability of being able to discern right from wrong as we know it. But what's even more critical is being able to discern from what is right to almost right. It's that subtlety, okay? And we know that the enemy is conniving and he's cunning, and he's subtle and he's highly intelligent. And so it behooves us to actually do a lot of studying so that we may understand, and that we would not be taken as prey. Okay, we know that he's roaring. He's a lion that's roaring, seeking whom he may devour, and we are not to be those. Amen. So I see a lot of you coming in. It's great to have you. Let me just make sure, yes, that we are recording. So what I'm going to do is teach. I'm going to do the training, and then after that, I will break off the recording, and then we will go into a space where we can share, and I can answer some questions, and you guys can share some of your insights of your homework too as well. Let me know, are you guys seeing me in speaker view? I want to make sure it's in speaker view, because I
Yes.
see everybody. Okay, but you see me now. Okay, because I don't see me now. But okay, as long as everyone can see me now, then this is great. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my screen. I'm going to share my screen with you all. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Right. So some of you, if you had seen the emails, this was a digital copy of my book, couldn't find where the actual published version was. So this is a unpublished version, right? But this was sent out so that you guys could read um, chapter 1 and 2. So in this book, I map out 7 steps of recovery. So the step 1 and step 2, hopefully some of you have read it up until this point. If you haven't, no worries at all. Okay, there'll be time. So I did send that out, and then I also sent the replay, and I also sent this other document that I had written that also gives us some insight as well. Okay, so I give some reasons about why you would want to leave a church, right? Some things that you may see that are abuses, and I'm just mapping them out for you, right? Okay. So those are 2 documents that I had already sent out. Okay. All right. So we're going to start here. Okay. So today is session 2. Okay. Um, so what we're focusing on this week is when personality disorders feel spiritual abuse. The homework that I had given was a list of videos, and those videos was a way of introducing you into the world of personality disorders. Okay, some of the videos were reels, so they were real short. Okay, just a couple of minutes, and some of them were. One was like 7 minutes, and one was probably about 45 minutes, 28 minutes. One was probably about an hour and a half, right? So they varied, but nonetheless, what I wanted you to see is different angles. And so some of the videos are experts talking about those who have disorders, and then there are those who have been interviewed who has a disorder. Okay. And so now you're able to hear from somebody who's a psychopath, a sociopath, and you're able to actually hear it from themselves about what it feels like to be a sociopath, psychopath. Okay. And then hear from the expert about what they've gained in understanding and doing research, and how to actually work with these individuals. It's important for us to understand. And my reason for sharing that is because I believe in the church, we don't have these conversations. These are not conversations we have. We have we have met people that we don't understand, and we have spiritualized um, who they are and our experience with them. We have spiritualized it and said Jezebel, Absalom, Korah. Okay, we have spiritualized it and said Simon the sorcerer. Okay, but we haven't quite understood that sometimes these are individuals that are undiagnosed as far as we're concerned. They're not ones that are walking around with a diagnosis. It could be bipolar, schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, but they present themselves to be fully functioning individuals. And so it has gone over our heads. We haven't discerned who they are. We just know that a little off now and again, not quite sure what's going on. Okay. Peter so and so, I don't know. He let the devil use him. And that's as far as it goes. When we do that, we miss the opportunity to understand that there are those who are actually suffering illnesses. And we have to be more understanding of who they are so that we can understand how we're now to respond to that individual and how the church is supposed to respond to that individual. Okay. So that's the purpose of me talking about personality disorders. As it is, everybody's talking about narcissism. Okay. Um, but very few people are talking about psychopaths and sociopaths. When I left the cult in 2010, I remembered a young lady who left around about the same time that I did. Actually, she's an older woman. She said to me, "Have you heard of narcissism?" And I said, "Narcissism?" I said, "That what if it sounds familiar. Sounds familiar." I said, "But I remember learning that at school." Right? I remember learning at school something about the man's reflection, looking in the stream of water and falling in love with himself. And she said to me, "You need to go and study and find out what it is." Because I believe that the pastor that we was under, that she has that. Okay. And I said, okay. And that's what I did. So when I left the cult, I actually went to the library. I went to the library and I took out 7 books. I took out 7 books on cults. Okay. Because I needed to understand what I had walked at. Some of you have walked at this, maybe not to the degree that I had, but you've been in contact with some very interesting characters. Do not be afraid to do the hard work. It's laborious, but do not be afraid to dig deeper and to study, because we are in the church and we are to protect the church as watchmen. We're on the tower with gatekeepers. We're not supposed to be asleep. We're not supposed to be dogs that don't bark. Okay. We're supposed to have a voice and we're supposed to protect and guard the sheep. That is a part of our functioning as pastors, as shepherds. And we're not to negate that as intercessors and as prophets and prophesizers and as seers, because we see in the realm of the spirit. And so we have to add to that knowledge and understanding. So dig deeper into books, okay? And one of the things that I learned from the books is that once you've been in a cult, you are most likely going to end up in another cult. And there's a reason for that. Once you have entered into a cult, you're more likely. So I have been on this journey of making sure that I am discerning, that I'm always learning, I'm always growing, because there's something in me that will pull me back into a very authoritarian, controlling, domineering, dominating, demonic, abusive relationship. There's something in me, in my life, in my experience, that it will pull me together because it's a force and a magnet. And so don't be afraid to study, and don't be afraid to tell your people as you are supporting them. Some of you are supporting people who've actually come out of these relationships, whether it be marriage, whether it be in their families, but don't be afraid to actually challenge people, as I was challenged to go and do your reading and studying. Okay. And so that was my desire, to give you a plethora of information so that you can tap into that. Okay. All right. So my goal here is to expose how narcissism, sociopathy, and other psychological disorders can hide beneath spiritual language, charisma, and authority. Okay. We've all seen somebody that's off key, we spiritualized it, or we don't see it, we become blind because of the charisma. Okay, charisma is power. Charm is deceptive. It's deceitful. And my aims and outcomes for this program is to help you to discern, is to build up your discernment bank. Okay, and to discern the difference between healthy leadership and psychological abuse, which is masked in spirituality. Okay. And the scripture reminds us, Matthew chapter 7 and verse 16, it reminds us, and this is red letters, it's Jesus speaking, you will know them by their fruits. Okay. And so the words to you will know them means that you will acknowledge. Okay. You will have knowledge and you'll acknowledge what you see. You won't try to pretend. You won't try to gaslight yourself, but you will have to acknowledge what you see, because you are studying and knowing them by their fruits. And their fruits is the outcome of their behavior. their traits, their qualities, their quirks, their flaws, but you will acknowledge it. You won't ignore it. Okay. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how do I get to the next page? Excuse me, everybody. Oh, we just do this. Okay, so another scripture for you. These are scriptures that are anchoring us in this practice of discerning and digging into these disorders. So First John chapter 4, verse 1 says, "Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits, whether they are of God." So the Bible even encourages us, it empowers us. A lot of times, church or church people, they disarm our ability to judge. They disarm us. Instead of empowering, they disarm. And one of the ways they disarm us is by saying things like, um, touch not the Lord's anointed. Okay. Don't ask questions. Don't critique. Okay. um what I'm telling you is what it is. My take on what the Bible says is what it is. And we're in echo chambers where we don't get information outside from our group. Okay. So it is for us, okay, the beloved, that we are to test every spirit that is put on us to do. And there is a standard, and the standard is that, does it look like God or does it not look like God? Okay, that's what we have to ask ourselves. All right, so we know when it comes to medical, when it comes to diagnosis, this is the work of the medical field. They have the book, the DSM, it's like their Bible. And there is a cluster of personality disorders, which comes under cluster B. Okay, and so I want to talk about some of those manipulative disorders. We're familiar with narcissism, but there's others, right? So cluster B disorders are known for dramatic, erratic, and emotionally manipulative behaviors. These traits often show up in spiritual abuse. Somebody's trying to get in. These traits often show up in spiritual abuse when a leader or member exerts control through charisma, deception, or emotional exploitation. Okay. And so they might present themselves as people that is very um, joyful or pleasant to be around, but the disorder itself is about manipulation. They're master in manipulators. So narcissistic personality disorder, abbreviated to be NPD, NPD. Okay, and this is very brief because there's so much more as part of the markings of a narcissist, but just a few ones to anchor us in. And also right now they're actually split up into various different types. I haven't shown that here, but I just wanted to give a snippet. So we see that they have an inflated sense of self-importance and entitlement. And if you meet somebody like this, they'll probably get under your skin. Okay. I'm dealing with somebody like this right now. Um, and it's things, and they're not in a place of position. Um, they were once a member in my church, but they have a grandiose sense of who they are. And they think they don't understand, they do not work with hierarchy. Okay, hierarchy that we all work with on our jobs, right? Supervisors, team leaders, co-workers, line managers. Even in that structure, CEOs, they don't even work well in it. Okay, they think they're above the law even in the workplace. So if they have that frame of mind in the workplace, then when it comes to church, they're just not going to work with the norms that are set, right? The pastor of the house, right? The apostle of the house. They're not going to take correction. They're not going to work within the confines of their role. If they're an usher, they're not going to work here. They're just going to assume that they have the responsibility of checking everybody else, right? They're not going to recognize the how God has dispersed authority amongst the group. And so therefore you're going to see conflict. You're going to see oppositional stances. Okay, they're going to buck up and always compete with you. Okay, narcissists, they are very competitive, and even in a relationship. I know many people that watched the video who didn't necessarily come to the class but watched the video. Many of them said, "This is my spouse." They compete against me. Okay, they're almost to the extent where they don't like me because they have more fight in the game than they do about love for me. Okay, so they exploit others for admiration and validation. All they want. And if you're a pastor, you're a teacher, if you have somebody who's a part of the worship team and you're the worship leader, you have to recognize these individuals as people that you cannot puff up. Okay, there's going to be those in your group that you're going to want to support them. You're going to want to emotionally uphold them and boost their self-esteem. Okay, you're going to have people that's insecure in your groups. Okay, and that's okay to support them emotionally and build them up. Okay, but those who are narcissists, if you are stroking the ego of the narcissist, then you've just made your warfare even more intense. Okay, that's what they want from you, and they're exploiting you to get that from you, and you're going to have to learn that I'm not supposed to do that. Okay, um, because it adds conflict and it changes the dynamics in the group, and people's like, why are you favoring that person? That person is um a meanie, but the pastor might not see it. Okay. They're a devil behind the scenes to everybody. But they have you stroking their ego. Oh yeah, so and so they're real good. So and so, yeah, they cooked me lunch. So and so they didn't even have to ask them to. They have you pumping them up, whereas everybody knows they're a devil behind the scenes, and they do that for manipulation. They only allow you to see the best of them, whereas everybody sees the worst. And here you are pumping them up in front of all your long timers, all the people that's been with you for the 5, 10 years, and they're made to feel this small and they've been puffed up here. They set that up. They set up the whole play, and they had you activating the admiration that they desire. Because remember, admiration for them is an addiction. They have to hear you puff them up. And it's called narcissistic supply. They have to get supply. Okay. So they lack genuine empathy, and they use spirituality to elevate their self image. Okay. Um, this one for me is the marker. This is where I'll say, my mom, this is my mom. Hey, I'll mark it on the wall. I'll mark it on the wall. That's the one, like, yeah, I marked it. You see this? Okay, that's what it is. Okay. Um, when people don't have empathy, that's when I know, and I'm not a doctor, okay, but I have learned through experience when there is no real empathy. If you watch some of the videos, right, there was a young black girl, and I wanted you to see the young black girl because oftentimes we see this disorders as white middle-aged men or something, right? We can't relate. If you haven't experienced these individuals, sometimes we just can't relate. But this young, chick with the afro that was, quite light, and she was very articulate, is saying, I don't care, right? I don't care. Like, I don't have feelings or caring about people, right? I have my buddy right here. He practically is my caretaker, does everything for me. But I can't lie. I don't care about what he's doing, that he's invested in me, that he's taking care of me. I don't care. Now I know I've learned to pretend I care. And this is what God wants to reveal to us. Just like the Pharisees, they're pretenders and they're placaters and they're actors. When Jesus was talking about hypocrites, these individuals are hypocrites because this is not the real them. They have to play act. They have to learn how to smile and they have to learn how to be charming, right? But it's not genuine. It's not from their heart. And if you watch the videos, I think there's probably about 3 people that told their testimony and told us we get a joy, we get a kick out of being destructive and hurting you. Okay. And the young black chick said, grown men. She's like, I've had grown men like they're afraid of me. Like little old me. Why are they afraid of me? Yeah, why is grown men afraid of you? It don't equate. But the manipulation is so strong that people's like, whoa, I can't deal with that type of individual. Okay. And so when they lack empathy, I remember saying to one person, all I need you to do is, okay, in order for me to want to elevate you, in order for me to want to see you in a role in ministry, I need to see you demonstrate a love for people. And I said, for example, if I'm preaching and somebody comes in the room and they're crying and boo-hooing, I need to know, can you go pick up some tissues and can you give it to the person and can you rub them on the back and say, it's okay. Jesus loves you. It's okay. It's okay. And I said, can you do that while I'm preaching so I don't have to, I can move on my message, but can you see somebody hurting in the congregation and you feel a pulling towards them? And all I'm asking, I just need to know, can you do that? And they said to me, no, no, I can't. That's a lot for me. You're asking too much. And I'm like, that's what I thought. That was just my tester question. You've proved my point. You've proved my hunch that I've discerned that you have no compassion in you for people, period. I approached her 3 times and she gave me the same answer. And these people are elevated in ministry. Now they've left me and they're elevated in ministry, but and this is how we have to be very careful of who we elevate, because people can present themselves to prophesy. They can present themselves as one who loves the Lord, but then at the same time, these are individuals that I have rebuked and I've corrected for putting word curses on people. These are people that I know that don't have a care in their bone for God's people. And they are not worthy to be in positions of power because they have a very destructive nature about them that is very dangerous. And I have seen it. Okay. And so you want to test people's empathy. We know that Jesus was moved in his bowel when he saw the distresses of the people. You need to see, is the people really feeling a burden, an inward burden, or have they learned to mask it? So antisocial behavior disorder, right? This is a new terminology, okay? Antisocial personality disorder. No, 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 no. What we used to say, okay, until they changed it in the DSM, we used to say sociopath, and we used to say psychopath, okay? Now they've done away with those words, and it's now antisocial personality disorder. And the reason being is because They said there was a destructive stigma attached to sociopath and psychopath, and it didn't give people a chance to actually breathe and interact in the wider community. So they changed the term. Okay. What's the difference between sociopath and psychopath? Okay. Sociopaths is via learned behavior. Okay. So maybe they wasn't born that way. The environment, the trauma, the family structure, the abuse had created maybe a child that just wants to kill their gerbil, right? And they had an outlet, not in hurting themselves, but in hurting people, okay, and being destructive towards other people, and they had an outlet, okay? Psychopaths, they would say, is unlike sociopaths, it was the environment that they learned and it produced that from them. Psychopaths is more inherent. It's more of their psychology, it's more of their hardwiring, some kind of way that there is a disorder and they're born that way. They are that way. They are destructive towards other people. They do want to hurt, and they can be murderers and killers and rapists and very destructive. Okay. We see individuals that would have no care, no remorse, no guilt, no shame, right? These are the things that you want to test people in, okay? That they have such manipulation, that they're not just deceitful, they're not just lying and being compulsive liars, but it comes with aggression. It comes with aggression, and they don't care. They just don't feel, okay? And so one of the things that I learned through this process is there was a video, I can't find it now, but I did actually find the psychologist. Um, he's still doing his work. He's actually a narcissist himself. Anyway, he's trying to learn himself, right? So one of the things he had showed is that when you look at their brains, right, a regular person and somebody who's a narcissist, sociopath, psychopath, okay, in their brains, there is where the empathy part is, it's missing. It's not there, right? He did a study and you cannot see it on the screen. Okay. So that's where they will be like, no remorse, don't care, don't apologize. They can't be held accountable for nothing. Okay. Even when it's criminal behavior, they just like in the courtroom, numb, feel no way, feel no pain for the person that they've murdered, and the family's boohooing and crying. They just can't relate to them. They don't know why. Okay. And in some of the videos, you had heard him say, I see why they're sad, but I don't know why they're sad. Like, why are they sad? And like, they want me to be sad? Like, I don't even get sad. Okay. So the young black girl, she said that the feelings that she has is anger, but she's never um upset or worried about the things that we're upset and worried about that are normal for us. Okay. So it makes it hard to have relationships with people that if they hurt you, they can't say sorry. Like she said, I'm saying sorry, but I'm masking when I'm saying sorry. I don't mean sorry. What am I being sorry for? But I know to say sorry because I've learned from people that that's what they want. But am I sorry? No, because I don't feel the pain. Okay. So we see these individuals, they make great CEOs, cutthroat people. We can see them as presidents, right? We can see them in high power positions because sometimes, in order to really climb up the ranks, this is not always, but we've seen people become very ambitious, right? And they don't have a care, throwing people under the bus. Okay. So they say, these disorders is on a spectrum. Okay. And so maybe the lower level people Everyday people, they make great leaders because they're not crying over spilt milk. Okay. Um, but so yeah. So these tools definitely can be used to go up the ladder. So now we've got borderline personality disorder, right? Uh, they used to call it multiple personality disorders, right? And so these orders causes individuals to be to have instability in relationships, in their identity and their emotions. They're all over the place because they have different parts of them that's showing up. Okay. So if you see the picture, they're in the middle. Their sense of self is here, but then they have different parts of them showing up at different times. Okay. Sometimes they feel like they have no control. Sometimes if you're in this relationship, you're trying to figure out, who am I talking to right now? Is it the little girl? Is it the teenager? Like, I'm not quite sure. Okay. And that's something that they're having to navigate. Okay. So they deal with intense fear of abandonment. And that often leads to their manipulation. They may use their spiritual experiences or crises to gain attention or control. Okay. So we got HPD, which is histrionic personality disorder. This is one to watch out for. They crave attention. I have noticed, right? I have said to myself that there are some people that's in ministry that I believe they are in ministry to become a celebrity. And that might sound weird, but I've realized some people have a desire to become famous, right? Just like I said, working with somebody that um, they don't understand hierarchy, even in the workplace. They're bigger and they're grander than their boss and their CEO. They don't know their place, so to speak. They just want to be on the big stage. That's how they see themselves. That's how they fancy themselves. And there are those in ministry that are striving in ministry that you would think, oh, that's the anointing, because we spiritualize everything, right? And so we recognize it as, oh, that's the anointing. Oh, that's the power of God in the man. The wind of God is on that person, man. They just moving up. God is just opening doors for them, man. I just see God moving in their life and their ministry. God is just positioning to open up doors. But if you really look closer at their character and their behavior and their motives, can you really say that? But we just like to look at the movement and the passion and the desire and the results of God, these doors, and we just say it's God. Who's to say it's God? Who's to say it's not that person's will? And that they're manipulating behind closed doors and that they are presenting their this and they're not. Okay. And they're going way above their time in their season. Remember the person that I said, I can't elevate you because I'm not going by if you can prophesy. I can, through trainings, I've activated people to prophesy. That's not a big thing, right? That's gifts. Okay, gifts to teach. That's nothing. It's your motive behind it. It is your desire, your innate ability to connect with God and his people from the right place and the right heart. That means something to me. And so we have to learn not to um, prioritize gifts over character. And we have to hold people accountable too. If you're going to be in ministry, it has to be character first. We've got to allow God to process you. I'm not going to be a part of your process of shortcutting. Okay. I had to be processed. Why would I shortcut your process? David was assigned, appointed, anointed as king. But why was he still sent to go back and take care of the sheep? Because the process still had to process. God didn't negate that part. Okay. So we have to remember there are those who could fall under this category where they crave attention. They crave being on social media. They crave being on YouTube. They crave being on the billboard. Now, so hear me out. There is nothing wrong with any of those things. Those are mediums to spread the gospel. Those are platforms that God anoints. There's nothing wrong with being on the billboard. But you do understand what I'm saying when I said these are individuals that are unprocessed and they're not going in the timing of the Lord, but they have this disorder that's fueling them. Okay. And that's their God. Okay. They just speak in Christianese, but we have discernment to understand, could it be this? Could it be that? Let me go back into prayer, seek God. But there are those who crave attention and they exaggerate their emotions for drama or validation. They may appear overly spiritual or theatrical to dominate the spotlight. They use seduction or emotional highs to manipulate groups or leaders. Okay. And we see this today with people on social media, on YouTube, influencers, okay, whether they're in Christendom or outside of Christendom, we see this with even them. And so social media has definitely, and psychologists will say this, social media has been stroking our flesh and it has activated levels of narcissistic traits in us because it's given us platforms and wider audiences which we never had access to before. But HBD is something for us to actually be aware of. Okay, now this one is an interesting one, right? Um, I told you about one mentee that I was working with, and she pulled from me my motherly instinct. I instinctively wanted to help this young lady. In fact, she reminded me of myself. Okay. At the time I entered the cult, I believe I was like 27 years old. I had 3 children. I was going through a divorce, right? And I was just broken, right? I was just totally broken, right? And so she had 3 boys, just like I did, right? And they were back to back. My children are back to back. Okay. Um, and she was a single parent. She was married and divorced. Okay. And I just instinctively just wanted to support her, just loving her, let her know, she told me this sub story that she was pawned off into fostering. She had like 10 siblings, and it was why was I was the baby, and everyone got to stay together. And my mom was a crack addict. Hold a minute. Just let me know if there's some odd behavior on the screen. I don't know if I've been hacked or something. Okay, so she would call me 3 in the morning. Oh, Pastor, oh, I'm at the hospital. Oh, can you pick me up? I need a ride. My kids are in hospital again, blah blah. And it's just back and back, this drama about her kids, this drama about her kids being sick. And this is one day I remembered, we was dealing with some situations, and I remembered I saw it clear as day, right in the air, the word Munchausen syndrome. And I said, Holy Ghost, what are you showing me? Munchausen? I was like, Munchausen. I was like, wait a minute. I know that term. Munchausen is like psychology. So I Googled it. And I said, yeah, I know this term. That's because I remembered it from school. There was it was named after this lady, Munchausen by proxy, right? Because there's 2 types. By proxy, Munchausen by proxy was a mother who uh, had her child go through various different medical procedures for attention. Okay, she put her children in jeopardy so that she could get the attention of people. Oh, that poor mother. And she has a sick son and he's got cancer. And she would do a GoFundMe and it was just all of this stuff, right? And I said, I was like, Holy Ghost, is this what's going on? And the Lord let me know this is what this young girl has got. Start paying attention. And I said, man, it's adding up. It's adding up. And I said, let me call some of her people because I don't know these people from Adam. And this is one of the ways that I came at the account. We read the scripture, Matthew 7:16. You'll know them, right? You'll know them. You will investigate. You'll acknowledge. You will be informed. When I left the cult, I had a dream. I had several dreams, right? But one of the dreams was I was Googling the cult leader's name over and over again. I was typing it. I just saw the Google bar. First name, middle name, last name. First name, middle name, last name. And I was like, and then I was going through some files. I was going through some files. This was a dream. It was on repeat all throughout the night, going through some files and Googling a name. And the Lord was like, you need to investigate. You're following people, but you need to know who you're following. And you need to really discern it and understand it, not just by what they say. See, sometimes we know people by not their fruits, by what they say. I don't care about what people say. I care about what they do, not by what they say. Because by what she said, her mom was a crackhead, and I don't believe she was. By what she said, her ex-husband left her. I don't believe that at all. I believe he did not want to deal with the craziness no more. And he said, I love my kids, and I know that because I had to contact somebody. And they said, I know the husband, he a good man. They're like, he's a good man. But she would be in the church fighting him physically in the church. I'm like, really? She doesn't give that impression. So sometimes you have to know people's people because they have a way of being fictitious. They're master manipulators. So with Munchausen by proxy, the individual fabricates or induces illness, okay, trauma or crisis. She was always in a crisis and always asking my support. And of course, I'd support, right? But then it just got to be too much. Something was wrong. Or crisis in someone else, often a child or vulnerable person to gain attention, sympathy or praise. Remember what I said? They need supply. They need adoration. They need supply. They need this one needs sympathy. Okay, the narcissistic needs you to pump them up and to favor them over the rest of the team. Okay, this one needs you to. So the mother of me was always helping, always supporting, making. You know how you are with your children, your adult children. You don't want them to suffer. Okay, you pity them, and so that's what was happening to me. I was fulfilling that role, and it was making her feel good. It was where she was addicted to it, so it meant that she had to keep creating crises. They were deliberate and on purpose so that she can get more of the attention that she craved. Okay. They may claim others are under attack because of being near them or invent crises to stay in power. So with her, she was always talking about her ex-husband. But I found that he's not like that. It's the other way around. He's not a bully. He's a mild-mannered man. He's not the aggressor in the relationship, okay? But because he was out of her life, I could not get his point of view, but I had to investigate. And someone shed light on, no, that's not what that relationship looks like. This behavior causes real emotional harm to others under the illusion of spiritual covering or intercession, okay? And so this is how sometimes it will work its way in, okay, through intercession or this whole thing about spiritual covering. Can you imagine working with somebody who's just spiritual covering and they're always creating crises? Or they're coming to you for spiritual covering and they're always creating on purpose deliberate crises so that you can be emotive, be emotional with them all the time. Not being spiritual, but being in your emotions, being in your flesh, and not hearing God. And because they work back to back drama, sometimes you don't have time to pray and see. It messes up your intercession of prayer. Because I'm getting called at 3 a.m. That's messing up my sleep. Remember last week, the week before, we session one, we looked at cult formation, and there was a list of maybe 8 to 10 things. One of them was sleep deprivation. You can control somebody by sleep deprivation by depriving them of sleep. Back-to-back projects, not getting enough rest. You can physiologically disturb the equilibrium and have control over somebody. You can also do that when you keep people on a fast for so long and they never off a fast to actually be regulated with their themselves and God. Okay. That's cult formation. So these individuals, one of the things that we see, especially because of social media, I mean, it was always there, but it's cult of personality. That's something we see, cult of personality, right? Like Donald Trump, he's a cult of personality, right? Influencers, okay? They have a band of people, rooting for them, okay? Um, People with extreme views. It could be political, it could be social, economical, but people band after these leaders, and they can be a cult leader, but it's based on their personality. Well, I'm with the Reds. Well, I'm with the Blues. Well, hold on a minute. Okay, I say they're both devils. Okay, this is me talking, right? I say they're both devils. Okay, so I can't go with the Reds or the Blues, but I can go with truths and principles. And as a prophet of God, I would stay in the middle, neutral, until God tells me otherwise. Okay. I can't be led by this person, that person, because people get sucked into the lie. Even when they know they're lying, they can't break away from it because they signed up for it. The manifesto. Okay. And so we have to have a level of neutrality so that we can critique something when it goes awry, when it goes really bad. Okay, we got to be able to have some sense of neutrality where we can say, "Oh, I was with you." Up until that point, I was with you. Okay, all of this that you're doing, you're taking a different path. Okay, and that ability to really critique is what a lot of people have lost when it comes to cult person. And I see people doing that with um, church leaders. And this is how we disarm people. I used to say to my people in my church, say, listen, if you ever put me on a pedestal, I used to tell them, I said, I'm going to knock it down. And I said, this is how I'm going to knock it down. I'm going to say or do something to offend you on purpose. Okay. And then you yourself will say, oh, she's off. And then you're going to drop me from that high horse that you put me on. Because furthermore, I'm not here to be worshipped. I don't need your worship. I do need you to worship Jesus, but I do not need you to worship me. I don't want your worship. Okay. As much as the Lord desires that we give honor to whom honor is due, I'll take that portion. But anything else is not my portion. Okay. So I'm not at liberty to uphold this image that you want me to hold. No, I can break it down in a day. I will embarrass myself. I will do something that's off to get your eyes off of me. And I am committed to that because how dare I go through my experience, having the scars and doing otherwise? How dare I? And I have noticed it is very easy for me to do it. I didn't know it until I became a pastor. And I thank God for that. I never see myself as a pastor, as a shepherd, never ever. A prophet, but not a shepherd. But I thank God because when He showed it to me and I had to walk that thing out, I said, my God, Now I see how easy it is to wield power because of that place and position in the hearts of the people. Now I've got to work extra hard to make sure they are not so attached and so infatuated with rooting for me. So much so I tell my people all the time, like Apostle Paul, no, 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 you follow me as I follow Christ. Imitate me as I imitate Christ. But you need to know if I go off the wall, you will never jump after me. Okay? You would never, ever jump after me. I got people right now, I'm going off the cuff, but I believe somebody in here is pulling on me. I got people that I'll be like, I never taught you that. I never taught you that. Okay, so you're somewhere else, but I never ever taught you that you would follow a leader so close that you would say, I don't know, I'm waiting on God, I'm seeking God. If you know they're going to hell, I have never taught you to go to hell with them. And you're in your right mind. You see what you see. You know what you know. You're behind the scenes. But then you want to come to me. I never taught you to watch somebody go to hell and believe that God wants you to go to hell with them. And obviously, I'm saying that because I'm saying stuff that's very serious. I have armed you enough to have discernment to know this is where I have to stop. That's cult of personality. When people will go to hell for you. In other words, when they would disobey God and make the leader an idol, something's wrong. And sometimes, as men and women of God, we do it, and we do it unintentional. Unintentional. I'm not saying people do it intentionally, unintentionally. But there are those who do it deliberately because they fall into these manipulative disorders. They don't care. Remember, they don't feel. If they murder 10 people, they're going to hell. They don't care and they don't feel, but they're preaching the gospel. You have to remember people like Jim Jones. You have to remember those other cult leaders they killed, they murdered. When they look at the spectrum of narcissism, okay, from 1 to 10, 8, 9, and 10 are individuals like sociopaths and psychopaths. They have a very destructive and aggressive side of them. Okay. And that's also on a spectrum too. Some will just maybe kill a gerbil or kick a cat, right? But there is the spectrum. When they go up, they can actually murder and kill people. Okay. That's the danger of these cults because they do not have empathy and they don't stop until people are murdered, killed, and destroyed. All right. So they may claim others are under attack because of being near them or invent crisis to stay in power. I'm going to read this verse. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 13 says, for such as false apostles, this is the Bible now, false apostles, deceitful workers. These are workers, but these workers are deceitful, says the Bible. They transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. They are already false apostles. They are already deceitful workers. Okay. They are known for being false and they are known for being deceitful in their character and in their ways and in their mannerisms. Okay. They cannot hide from God. And yet they transform, they cloak, they disguise, they camouflage themselves into apostles of Christ. They act like they're for Christ. They look like they're for Christ. They go hard for Christ. But yet the Bible tells us these are false people and they work out of deceit and deception. So there are those. There are those. And so red flags, what are the red flags of these traits? Okay. In spiritual environments, gaslighting with scripture. Okay. So we know gaslighting is when somebody tries to say or do a thing to get you to discount what you just seen or what you just heard. Okay. So now you're doubting, right? You know what you're seeing. Okay. And that's what I was saying with that person. They're gaslighting themselves right now. Okay. They're acting like they don't realize the harsh reality. They want to ignore the harsh reality and live in deception because it's easier. Okay. And so they gas people, people gaslight using the scripture. Public shaming or private idealization, control masked as care, counsel, or correction, no accountability, but they want 100% obedience to them. They're not accountable to nobody, but you must be highly accountable to them. Fear-based loyalty versus love-based leadership, and charisma without character. These are red flags, but I also see these as how we have disarmed the church. Okay. This is where it is easy for people to get away with this stuff because of these red flags. One, we don't recognize them as red flags. Okay. Loyalty is an important feature of our discipleship process. Okay. It's an important feature. It's an important feature when you are in your process of being a servant and a servant leader. Okay. But then it can be very toxic to the extreme that you're more loyal to the cult personality than you are to God. Okay. And where we build a culture that we love the charisma and the feel good of the cult personality, the leader. And I say that the leader, but really and truly, that person doesn't even have to be in the place of power or position. Okay. Because I've known it to come from the pews and I've known it to also come from the pulpit. Okay. My mistake initially was it always came from the pulpit, but I have learned from my walk um, that it can also come from the pews too as well. I remember hearing a story from John C. Maxwell. We know he's the guy that has written, oh my God, tons of book on leadership. And when he started his pastoral walk, his first church as a pastor, he was he one of the reasons why he's been studying leadership, he says, is because he wasn't a good leader. Okay. When he first had his first position to pastor a church, and he realized that even though he was the pastor of that church, he had no power. There was somebody else in that group of of trustees and the board and trustees and elders and so forth who had power, didn't have the title, but had the power. He had the influence. Okay. And so he talks about sometimes leaders are not the ones with the titles, but they wield all the power. So that could be in the pews, and it could also be in the pulpit, right? Um, so yeah, so we have a culture where we really highlight charisma, and when people got charisma, they make great leaders, and we want them up front. Sometimes we push people up front because we rather be in the back. We're like, you have the charisma, you're that type of person, you love the limelight. And we don't realize what we're doing is just, oh my God, that's the worst thing to position somebody when their heart is not right. It's not fully matured or it's not being processed by the Spirit of God. Okay, so these are red flags, okay? These are red flags. So the effects that this has on victims is tremendous. And some of you have talked about this with me. It's tremendous. It's humiliating, right? It is just people overreaching with their power into your emotional, psychological, your physical and neurological, and relational and spiritual life. Uh, to the extent where now they have done so much research and they are saying that when you're under such relationship where you're walking on eggshells and you don't know if you're going to hit a landmine, okay, and that person's going to be explosive, all right, that now all of that built up anxiety and depression is heightening your cortisol levels. That's the stress hormone, and it's creating disease. So people are suffering not just with depression, not just with suicidal thoughts and PTSD, complex trauma, loss of personality identity. That was something I had to find myself, my sense of self, because I had allowed myself for them to take over and for them to want to duplicate me like them. And so I had to find who I am, right? Um, People experience memory problems, insomnia, brain fog. I've seen that and I witnessed that. I remember seeing one guy, man, he couldn't even tie his shoelaces. He couldn't even tie his own shoelaces because of the critique and the fear-based environment. It was so controlling that he would just be shaken literally, just trying to. And I watched him, and I'm like, man, that's not who he was when he first came here. He wasn't acting like this, right? And so I'm looking at the effects of people, and I'm like, I'm just as, and I was all the way numb. I was so numb that I stopped feeling anything, right? Because I was isolated. And when you're isolated, you don't even trust yourself and you don't trust people. And especially in those environments where they put the fear on, oh, the outside world, right? This is how many people was induced to drink poison because of the outside world, right? You don't want to deal with that. Okay, you don't want to deal with the wrath of being contaminated by the outside world. Okay, we've seen church splits and spiritual confusion enter in when these events happen, right? Um, it destroys the church from the inside out. When you have these individuals, it doesn't matter where they pull up rank from the pulpit to the pews. It can happen anywhere, or even outsiders coming in. Okay, outside newly appointed outside leaders coming in, and you're just assuming, oh, okay, you've already been ordained, oh, you've already been trained, oh, okay, and you quickly introduce them to the group, the church, and you get them working, and they just cause havoc. Is that everybody? No. But we do have to be mindful and we do have to be discerning because the impact on people's lives is damaging. Sickness and disease, brain disease, right? They said this stuff is linked to brain disease. They say it's linked to brain tumors. They say it's linked to suicidal thoughts and depression. Okay. I remember praying for God to kill my pastor. Like, seriously? And not out of malice. I wasn't like, oh, just no, it wasn't that malice. It was because I was literally in a prison and my brain just, I could not think of life with freedom in it, with that person in my life. I knew I was in prison forever. And instead of me thinking of, well, you can leave. This is how controlled I was. I couldn't even think of leaving. I just succumbed to the thought of my freedom will come when she dies. So I was like, God, maybe. And it's hard. And I'm saying that and I'm being real transparent. It's horrible to think that way. But this is how controlled I was that I couldn't even think of easy peasy. If you feel that controlled, something's wrong. Okay. If you feel that coerced, isn't that a red flag to leave? I couldn't even think that. That wasn't even a thought. There's a video there. He's an expert. He does intervention on getting people, rescuing people out of cults. One of the that's where people's families will come to him and say, my family members in the cult. They're in Scientology. You've got to rescue them. So he talks about this thing about reform, um, thought reform, brainwashing, right? And I was brainwashed, right? Some people, they just offended by their pastor. They've experienced offense in the church. That's not my story. Okay. My story was I was brainwashed. Okay. That's my story. And it took years of me to get back into my brain and into my body. Okay. And so my brain could not work to get myself free because they disarmed me. They broke that part off. The sense of the individual, the sense of doing something for me. I'm not taking any of this. What do you mean? Right? That was dead and gone. So the brain could only think of, well, God, maybe you can do something. And maybe the thing that you can do is get them out the way. So there was no empowerment for me. Okay. I was waiting on God to intervene. There was no intervention. Okay. And that's why we have to be careful with um, trying to rescue people. Because sometimes in our rescue people, even though they want out, they don't want out. Because the brain is brainwashed. He said, thought reformed to think like them, and it won't let that person be free. They cannot think of being free. So sometimes what they have to do is they actually have to kidnap that person and let them be detoxed away from the cult so they can realize, no, this is the real world. Like they told you that you would die. Didn't they tell you that if you came out from the compounds? Yeah, they did tell us. And you see, it's been 30 days, so we've had you here and you're still alive, right? Right? So that now do you believe that they lied to you? That takes time in the period. Okay. And so that's why we have to be the eyes and ears. We've got to see these spirits. We've got to see these people. We've got to be more knowledgeable, more aware so that we can knock this thing down. Because to save somebody could take forever and a day. There are some cults where I've met cults that you're not allowed to have sexual relations. You cannot get married. You cannot create. You cannot have children. So if that be the case, and some of them, I think that guy he talked about one particular cult, the cult leader castrated himself, and then he made everybody else get castrated. Okay. So now they've lost parts of themselves because the cult leader's got mental illness, but he's highly functioning, super articulate, a great leader on the outside, but the mindset is warped. Okay. I'm just reminded about there's this cult personality. He's an influencer. I don't know his name, but I did see him a couple of weeks ago. He's married, he's in like some poly type of relationship with these young black women, and he's got babies with them. Some of you guys may even know who he is. I don't know his name, but I just seen him. But anyway, he was on social media all the time presenting this. I'm a king and I've got like these five women and they got my children and we're happy families and all these ladies, they take care of me and we live in a mansion. And I mean, he was a whole entire influencer, right? People loved their story. They loved what they were doing. It sounded like they've been progressive. Okay. Um, and the women held this story up for so long. Okay. I don't know what happened, but I saw this video when the ladies were actually throwing him under the bus. They rallied together. I think the police came in and they disbanded it and said, this is a cult. And now they're telling their stories. And you're like, but you lied all this time. You was on social media. You was acting like you was happy families. And they are acting like they're off, like they're on some type of drugs. They're disabled. They're because they've obviously taken off the mask. So now the mask is off, and you're like, whoa. They look like they had their acts together. Now they're emotionally, what's that syndrome again? Stockholm is like they had Stockholm syndrome, taking care of the pimp, providing this image of he's the king and we're his queens and we got all these babies. And now that the whole thing got busted, they're like, we don't want to be kidnapped no more. This ain't life. This is a mess. He's a liar. He's a fraud. He was stealing money from the public. You guys was buying these t-shirts, paying for our mansion. But this whole thing, we was being tricked. We was nothing but, you know, here under duress, coercion. But when you see their minds, these young women, you realize the brain is going to take time to come to its consensus. Their mind is all over the place, it's shattered. So let us just remember the impact, the effect, the destruction that this happens in churches, in homes, in families, in marriages, in children. Children go through this. Some of their parents are narcissists. Some of their parents are manipulative, don't care a thing about them. But all they care about is the attention they get from being a parent. Okay. So sociopaths in the pulpit and the real life impact. These are highly intelligent and manipulative individuals. Make sure you watch the videos because you'll see how manipulative they are and how they mask. Sometimes it's hard to hear people say, I don't care and I don't feel. I'm an empty shell. And hear it from somebody that looks like you or looks like one of your children. Sometimes that's very hard. You're like, wow, they're just 21 years old. I've never thought of 21. I'm thinking a middle-aged guy, a dude, right? No, it's sad, but we've got to see the reality that these things do exist. That they have a pattern of criminal or unethical behavior. The leaders that I was following, they were definitely involved in abuse and they were involved in fraud, and they co-signed other forms of abuses that I did not know until I left. They kept that under hush hush. They were providing young women in their ministry to sleep with their mentor. And I never even saw it at the time. It never entered. I never said to myself, well, why is he always taking the children? Why is he always taking the young girls? I mean, I just saw it as a privilege. My brain never took me to the place where I was like, whoa, a grown man? Like, really? No, it was spiritualized. We was told he needed them because young women, young virgins are pure. They're pure. And he needs them for healing. He has like cancer patients, HIV, and maybe that was a lie. I don't even know. Okay, I don't know. But I can tell you, this is what I was told. Okay. And that he would need these young girls to go up to his house because he needed to do a session on these people and he needed to channel energy through them to heal them for Jesus. I mean, I don't know, but when I laughed, I realized that was a whole people came out the woodworks and said what was really happening. But they were involved in that and they never rebuked it. In fact, those who fled from that abuse, I didn't see at the time, but they chastised them and they isolated them and they turned their family members against them for not accepting the abuse of what was happening in his house as a married man. Okay. So you're gonna see that and you would think, why would they do that? They grandparents, they care about people's. No. When somebody is soulless, heartless, no empathy, no remorse, no guilt, no shame, they cannot care. There's nothing you can do about that. They cannot care. So they thrive in hostile or polarized church environments. Okay. Remember now, the church is a hospital. Not always a hospital, but that's one of it's a battlefield. It's we're the called out ones. We're followers of the way. But there's going to be people that's going to come that's sick. Okay. Some of these individuals are seeking comfort in the church only to destroy the church. And as pastors, our hearts is open to reach any and everyone, right? We always have the perception of our house is open and we receive everyone. We do not reject. We understand that people come to us who have been rejected. We understand that. And we don't want the church to perpetuate that narrative. So we are open to receive all and everyone. Okay. But what I want to appeal to you is to work with your team. While the pastor holds that place and position, and that's great, the pastor should not work in a silo. They must work with a team where there's seers in the team, those who have dreams, those who have visions, those who have eyes to see. Because when the pastor is opening his heart, he's married to the church and he's doing his job, she's doing her job, and that's great. There has to be somebody on the team that they can lend ear to and say, okay, what are you hearing? What you seeing? Okay, because I want to take this person on. I'm thinking about doing this with that person. And people have to be honest enough to say, I had a dream. And I had a dream that that person had a deck of cards. This was somebody that they wanted me to discern their future partner. And I liked this guy. I liked him. I thought he was great. I thought he was funny. I thought he was likable. Blah, blah, blah. All outside stuff. God hadn't said anything to me until he did. And he told me he a liar. This man is a whole entire liar. And I said, my God. Whew, Jesus. I'm like, okay, this man's a liar. What am I supposed to say? They're supposed to be getting married. And the Lord showed me. He had a deck of cards and he put them behind his back. This man was lying. I took it to my husband and I took it to my pastor and we saw God about it. And so we said, okay, we're watching this and we pray that God will reveal it to her because some people do not want to hear the truth, people of God. That is it. We've got to walk in wisdom. And so the next meeting we had, he said, oh, I told her that she does not have to leave her church to come to my church. And I said, oh, no, 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 no. We want you to know. She is released to go and serve in your church. We are for the marriage. We are for what you guys want to do. And we are not getting in the way. No. If she wants to, if you serve at church, we don't want you to one serve here, one serve there. No, 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 no. We release her to go to your church. That's fine. We don't have a problem with that. So I said, by the way, what's the name of your church again? Why is it that he don't remember the name of his church? I said, he said, oh, I can't think of it right now. So wait a minute, but last week you told me you was not only in the church, you told me you had a position in the church. You was like an elder or something, a deacon or elder. I'm like, so now that I said, oh no, 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 she can go to your church. Now you don't remember nothing. I said, this man's a whole liar. He a whole liar. And then he wanted to talk about her business. Oh, I'm gonna help her support her business. I said, oh, 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 oh. So I see the ploy now. You want to help with her business. No, you after her money. That's what I see. You are after her money. So I said, okay, Jesus, unravel, expose this whole plan. And so the next thing I heard is she said, Pastor, this man went and took me out, bought me some food, and I threw up in the car. I said, wow. And she said, I heard the voice of the Lord tell me, do not eat from this man ever again. She said, what? She said, oh, wow. And that's when she realized, cut that off. This man was deceiving and deceptive. He was charming like I don't know what. He said all the right things. But people of God, you got to ask the right questions. You got to ask the right questions to uncover people's motives. And you've got to have seers that can see and give you the warning. Come together in prayer and intercession. Because these people do damage not only to the people's lives, people's businesses, not just the church, but the individual. God's raising them to be a deliverer. Now he got to build them back up again. I had to be in the wilderness for 5.5 years just to get back into my right mind. So now God has to wait a whole entire season. He don't skip the season. I have to go through the process to have a desire to want to walk with God and to be raised up all over again. So work with a team so that you can hear what God is saying. One person doesn't have all the answers. We work with teams, okay? Because they're cunning and deceptive. I talked a lot about cold personality over Christ-centered community. Okay, we cannot bat for people, and we cannot teach people to bat for us more than Christ. We cannot teach that. Sometimes we teach it without teaching it. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I had to say to my people, like, don't put me on a pedestal. Oh, Pastor, you this, you this, you that, you that, you that. I love it here, and that. I'm like, there's plenty of times I said, that's great, but I want you to know there's entirely so many great churches out there. They're just as great. I don't think that we're anything more special than any other church. I've had to downplay and devalue what people say just to bring a sense of gratitude, but also a sense of some people want to exhort above and beyond. Okay, and I'm not about that life at all. Okay, but sometimes people can do that, not understanding some of the things that can happen with that. Okay, and I'm not one to be easily puffed up. Um, and I'm certainly not trying to be a cold personality by far, but definitely someone who wants to shine the bright on Christ, and people need to know that and hear that language so that they can perpetuate that. They can model after that. Like I said, sometimes it's not, we're not. intentionally trying to be very cultic or cultish, but we're just following the pattern that people have done, right? But we have to intentionally set new patterns, patterns that puts Christ at the head of the church and not man, right? So I believe you understand what I'm saying. So Titus 1 and 16 say they profess to know God, but in works, it's not in what they know, but in works, they deny him. Okay. Being abominable, disobedient, and disqualified for every good work. You see what you see. Don't pretend. Don't pretend you don't see it. Like when that guy was talking, I said, my God. God said he a whole liar. I said, he is? I said, he sounds all right. Looks all right to me. God was like, keep watching. But I'm telling you right now, there was no evidence at that time. But he said it. And I didn't gaslight myself. I told my husband, and I said, I'm telling my pastor, because I'm gonna make sure I'm accountable to this information. Because when it goes down, it's gonna go down heavy. So we all know, and we're gonna all make a decision about what we're gonna do about this. And luckily we didn't have to, but the Lord, through intercession, it was very quick. It wasn't even like 2, 3 months. It was like just in a couple of weeks, it unfolded. Amen. All right, so drastic effects of toxic leadership and abuse. Okay, this is the horrible of the horrible. I said about some impacts. Okay, some things that affect, and these are they're very destructive to people's souls. Okay, but this is drastic murder, premeditated or impulsive killing, justified by twisted beliefs or unchecked rage. Okay, these are warped individuals. Mass murder, group killings often tied to cult ideology, delusion. The delusion part is just overwhelming. I mean, these days we use the phrase, drinking the Kool-Aid, but that was no joke. Almost 1,000 people were sent to Guyana, cut off from the world. Oh, Jesus. This was me here. I was the walking dead, just a zombie. Just a zombie. I was emotionally numb. I was disassociated. I couldn't function spiritually or psychologically. I was just shut down as a person. If you knew me, people, my family didn't recognize me. I had lost so much weight, they just didn't recognize me. I was not myself. Okay, I didn't dress the way that they knew me to dress. Okay, I was dressing like a house on the prairie, right? I was not a fashionista who they knew me to be. Okay, I just looked different. I looked off. Okay, sexual ritual abuse. What I was saying about the guy asking young girls, asking for virgins specifically to do what? What rituals were they doing? Why was it at his house? And his wife at the time was sick. And so he would say, at first, he would say that he was trying to heal his wife, but she died of cancer. So I don't know if he went off the rockers because he actually died of cancer, but he was still taking in girls, saying that he was healing other patients in HIV and cancer. I don't know what was going on. Nowadays, you got people in the prophetic doing this. I told my husband the other day, okay, I said, let me tell you something. These men of God, these so-called men of God, okay, that sleeping with all these people in their churches, okay. I said, babe, I've come to realize some of these men here are men that have a high sex drive, okay, have high sex drive and they have no moral standard at all, okay, and they're just in their flesh. And then there are others are doing it as a power ritual, okay. There are others that they are sleeping with the women. I remember I've had this dream about two people, these two prophets, two different seasons of my life. Um, I wanted to go to their school of prophets, right? And the Lord kept on showing me their name in black ink. And I was like, what are you saying? God was like, you can't go. And I'm like, I want to go. So I ignored God. I paid my money. It was like $400. Paid my $400 to go. And they did something, said something, and that just messed me up. I can't remember what they did, but whatever it was, it wasn't major. It was something like I paid my money and they didn't send me my information so I can get in the class. It was more administrational, right? But obviously, God told me not to do it, and I was not paying attention. I didn't go with what God told me about this person. All I knew is their name was in black ink. God did not have faith with this person. This is what I knew. So anyway, I paid my money, said I'm going. Anyhow, I believed that they were anointed. I believed that they had revelation, and I just wanted to be a part of their ministry. So God had to give me a dream of this man sleeping with women in his churches. And this person was an emerging prophet apostle, was with big names. And right now, I don't even hear of him. But at the time, he was on the thingy. Um, I had a dream that he was sleeping with women in his church. And it wasn't until I'm going to say maybe last year or no, maybe about 2023, which would be maybe about 7 years later. His wife came up on my page, on my Facebook page, just randomly, like randomly. I never heard of them since that day. I know what God told me, and that was it. And so I just want to check. Okay, so I'm gonna start winding down. I'll be telling these stories, but anywho, I pray that it helps support somebody. So anywho, so lo and behold, I saw his wife and I saw the little girl, and I said she was pregnant at the time. And I said, well, I don't see the dad. Never thought about it. And I said, wait a minute, I had that dream. So anyway, come to find out, she put him all on YouTube. This man was sleeping with the women in the church while I was pregnant. That was the time when I was watching them. She was pregnant. Um, Everything's public. It's all like they're public. And I said, OMG, that's why God told me. And I'm thinking they're anointed, right? Um, but we have to check in with God. God knows. Some people just want to do ministry. And he was manipulating people. He was lying. I mean, the character was not there. The character was of somebody that just didn't have a feeling, right? Your wife is pregnant and you're in public ministry and you can get away with sleeping with women in your church. Some of these people that do that, and some of them are high profile, they don't care about people. They have no shame. You're like, they said sorry and they made a public apology. No, these are people that actually have no shame. Something's wrong with that. Okay. And so they wear a very destructive mask. Leaders present false charismatic personas while hiding predatory or sociopathic behaviors. Okay. Malnutrition, physical and spiritual deprivation due to control over food, health, or access to basic care. Some cults, you're on like 1 meal a day or no meal a day. Okay, then they can control your mind. Brainwashing techniques, they have to work with all of these aspects. Then you can really control that mind and shut their thinking down and own a person. So sometimes you're like, well, why are these people coming at 10 years later? Because their brain has been owned for all these years. Okay. And so for aggression, verbal and physical violence, intimidation, or outbursts used to dominate, silence opposition. People go silent, right? My leaders at the time, they were highly aggressive and dominant. If I show you them, I did some investigation yesterday and realized they moved to another state because that's what they do. They cause havoc in one place and they move around. Okay. But they're still doing what they're doing. There's going to be no change there. But if I showed you them, they're sweet old people. You just wouldn't even believe me. I'm telling you, you wouldn't believe me. Okay. But these people are they beat you into silence. Okay. So one thing you have to realize is that in recovery, it begins with the truth. And the truth is, it's not your fault. For a long time, I was very angry with myself for even going for it. Okay. But in studying it, it's like it's like it's like a Stockholm, right? People cave in and they support their pimp. They cave into the pressure and to the intimidation. Okay. You're not going crazy. You know what you saw, you know what's going on, right? Um, and yet you're targeted because you have somebody that you have value, you have something to bring to the table. But instead of them supporting it and valuing it, they demise it because they really want, in some levels, they want to be like you. These type individuals where they don't feel, they feel if you watch some of the videos, a lot of them will say, I'm very frustrated. I don't understand why people love. I don't understand why people care. I don't understand why when somebody dies, why you got to be sad. I don't know what that feeling feels like. So they're frustrated. They want to know how can they be more like you that has feelings. You have the feelings. Okay. And so you have the value. So discernment deliverance is not paranoia. That's the wisdom and healing. And so with these trainings, this share that I'm sharing, the understanding, it's to bring discernment, but also to bring people to a place of deliverance. If it's not for us, it's for the people that surround us, so we can support them. Okay, so therapeutic tools, things that you want to think about doing is grounding exercises. Um, being out in the sun is good, right? Walking in the ground, even in my house, even though it's not the ground, but even something like that allows us to really feel the impact of our bodies. Because when you're under brainwashing, there's something called floating, and I've experienced that where I feel like I'm not human, I'm just floating. And that's really how they feel. But because they break your spirit, it's like they want you to become like them. Okay. So now you got to fight to become you. So journaling your experience and not judging yourself. Okay. There's a book called The Body Keeps Score. That helps us to understand how trauma actually impacts our body. Okay. And so that we can recognize the trauma in our body and how to transform that trauma. So something that I want you to think about. We're gonna get ready to close. Oh, you know what? I can get in this room. That's what I'll do. Um, so I want us to think about this. What red flags have you recognized that you've ignored in the past? Okay. Before I do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video so that you guys can share. So let me go ahead and stop share, get in this room so I can stop the video. So I'm going to end it right here. I pray that this has been supportive and helpful for you. Um, and for those who are watching this video, what I would say is get in the room, okay, so you can be a part of the next session.